Steve, but what's the most misunderstood fact about data centers and their water usage?
Wow. The one misunderstood fact, I would say it isn't really much about how water gets used to me. I think it's really people don't talk enough about who ends up holding the risk, right? So I think everyone argues about the number of gallons, but the real issue is that tech companies, they've been treating water like it's a budget, it's a line item on their budget, right? And conversely, communities have been treating water like it's a birthright. And so I think, the part for me that I think is important in 2026 that we don't talk about is these two are finally going to collide. Or maybe it's going to slid into 2027, but I think those are the two facts, right? Like neither party owns this. So I'm kind of curious how this is going to shape out. To me, that's the one fact that always sticks out.
Okay, cool. Jess, same question to you, and then we'll finish it with your dad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, right, with Steve and what he's saying. When you look at like the actual like total consumption of water usage, if you look at it nationally, right, like you could say it is a little bit of overplayed, right? Like we don't necessarily have the national level like use. And if you look at like semiconductors and agricultural use, it's far greater, right? But at the same time, like what Steve is saying, these aren't being done kind of on a national instrumentation basis. A lot of it's being driven by for-profit. And so it really matters on the local level. And there are quite a few examples of local levels, right, where these projects are being pushed and the public's pushing back, and it is having water issues, and it is affecting communities. You know what I mean? And that gets back to like where they're being built and how they're being built, right? And all these issues that we're kind of currently facing. But to me, yeah, I mean, there is future technology that we're looking at, like photonics, right? And like splitting atoms and considerably less consumption of like that really valuable resource. But at the same time, like it's not overplayed because like as of present day, right, there are communities and there are people that are being affected by this negatively, and they don't have to be if we had a little intention and we did this like collaboratively. So to me, it is a big problem. All right.
Awesome. Brian, same question to you, Brian.
Yeah, so my take or my feeling is that water is always going to be a key component of any data center, simply because of how it handles heat transfer, and that aspect means that the water that's used can be recycled, and so it isn't necessarily in a case where the water has to be used and lost, but with technology, the water can be used and recycled. And there are equivalents today that are becoming available. In fact, I was reading the other day about an equivalent that Shell has come up with that can be utilized for cooling as well in circuits, batteries, and radiator systems. So water is just the medium. The question is, how do we conserve it and reuse it?
Okay, good point. Yeah, I mean, we have been hearing, and I know, especially in the Southwest, there's been a lot of talk about, and Texas is building a lot of data centers. There was the big Utah data center proposed that would have taken like all the water and all the electricity that Utah is producing. There's a lot of questions about, water is a huge topic, especially from a community, right, as Steve was saying, and also from an economic basis, because we are using AI and we do need AI. So actually, Brian, back to you, since you've done a lot of construction, or you've built a lot of data centers, or are active with that.
Yes.
Over your period of time, have you, how has the modern data center have evolved? I know in the old days we used to use a lot of CPUs, right, which also did run hot, and there was probably more air cooling. But how has that changed now with this new breed of GPUs? Are we going to see more of a drive toward more of liquid cooling and the requirement for water? Is that just a given, or is there a sweet spot where we can balance that?
Well, there's definitely going to be a demand for increased consumption of cooling, and air cooling is not able to make the transition that data centers in the future are going to need. So like recently I saw a prototype of a server rack that was roughly 4 foot square and 7 foot tall. And it consumes 1 megawatt of electricity. And the only way to get a megawatt into that server is while the conductors are hollow and you're actually running fluids inside the wire that's bringing power to the server and in through the servers. So they're actually being plumbed. So I think the technology has to go in 2 directions, one of which is integrating cooling fluids of one type or another, with the fact that we also need to work towards semiconductor designs that are less energy intensive. I think there's always going to be that push.
Yeah.
And you know, my final comment is that when people talk about having access to water, everybody throws out what they want in the ceiling is unlimited perspective. There's a difference between what we want and what we actually need. And I think that's where conservation comes into play. And, you know, a data center, like, we need all the electricity and water that the state of Utah can produce. Well, that's not realistic.
Right. That's not realistic. And you, of course, it tends to
yeah, it goes back to what Steve said, right?
Yeah.
And about how treating like water and these different items like wattage and stuff as a line item, right? Versus like we know how the public perceives these and how they have historically, right? And you're not factoring in the cost of the rippling and costs, right? The secondary and tertiary of these changes, right? And how financially that's going to affect communities on a large scale. And they have to be done in win-win situations, in my opinion. Like you need to be working with the public of where to build them, how to build them, how does the public benefit? You know, what's their percentage of ROI on this investment? You know, taking this risk, doing this near their children. You know?
That's a good point. That's a good point, Jess. Hold that thing, because it's going to tie into the question that I want to ask Steve now. Is when you had mentioned community and kind of this you know two things colliding almost. Do you really think that should water usage be reported as you know mandatory and public, kind of like what we're doing for emissions? You know, like we have a lot of we're generating various particulate matters and so forth that are monitored. Do we really think that we need to create a mechanism from a policy standpoint or from a state level or even federal level where we should start reporting water usage by data centers?
I mean, I absolutely right. But I think it's bigger than just reporting, right?
Bigger than that. Okay.
Yeah, it's already starting to happen. I think, again, I'm giving you the management consultant answer here. The real question is whether it's being done well, right? So I think we're past debating whether this should happen. There are some states. I was looking the other day, like Brian was saying, I was doing a little bit of research, and I found that I think there's like up to 10 states now. I know Illinois, California, surprisingly South Carolina, some of these other states that you probably won't think are a little more progressive on this lens, on this front.
Very conservative versus progressive, right?
Exactly. So it's a mixture of all of the states, right? Just kind of just show you how sort of unified some people are when it comes to this. That these states have bills that are moving through different legislator, and I know there's a U.S. bill now, a federal bill. I think it was introduced by I want to say senator in Illinois. Requiring data centers to report their water energy use, right? So California,
water and energy,
water and energy. Okay. And then they're pushing. I think a couple of those states are pushing for this to be sort of public dashboards that folks can see. So not just reporting, but then people can kind of log into and kind of see it. And again, I think there's a bigger pattern. That's a play here. But to answer your question, absolutely. This needs to be mandatory, and I think at the federal level, actually.